Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Lethbridge police have an update as to what charges will be laid against a 40-year-old woman involved in a downtown hostage-taking yesterday afternoon. Beginning next week, Ottawa is bringing back mandatory random COVID-19 testing at 4 major Canadian airports. And we hear how mercy ships floating hospitals are having a big impact saving lives in a number of African nations.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. We have an update to a story we first brought you yesterday about a very scary hostage situation that took place in downtown Lethbridge. As BCN's Angela Stewart explains, Lethbridge police have laid a number of charges against a 40-year-old female suspect, and the city is thanking the police for their hard work in resolving the situation safely.
The offender was known to that law office.
40-year-old Courtney Louise Shaw of Lethbridge faces numerous charges, including 1 count of attempted murder, aggravated assault, taking a hostage, and use of an imitation firearm while committing an offense. This comes after Shaw held a 54-year-old woman hostage Thursday afternoon just inside this Lethbridge business.
At approximately 1:30 p.m., Lethbridge police responded to a 911 call reporting an armed subject inside the Lethbridge Legal Guidance Office along the 400 block of 5 Street South.
Police say 4 employees were approached by Shaw, who asked to speak to a specific lawyer.
When she was advised the lawyer was not available, she asked to use the washroom. After approximately 10 minutes, she exited and pointed a black handgun at 2 of the employees and threatened to kill them.
One of the workers was able to grab their phone and hid it under a desk to notify police.
As the situation progressed, the subject also produced a knife, continuing to threaten to kill the employees if they attempted to leave and did not get the lawyer on the phone.
A 54-year-old woman was then forced into an office room while the others were able to escape the business. After police arrived, negotiations were made over the phone with the suspect for about an hour.
There was even moments in they had communication with the victim herself, is my understanding, through a speaker. There came a critical point where the crisis negotiators believed that there was an imminent threat to her life, and it was at that moment that the tactical team made entry into the building and likely saved her life.
Shaw was found holding a knife to herself, while the victim was found with life-threatening injuries to her neck.
I want to extend my thoughts to the victim and her family during this time.
During Friday's press conference, Mayor Blaine Higgins says the safety of the community takes precedence, even more now following this situation.
I want residents to know that as a city council, we know a safe community is one that prospers, and we will continue to do what we can to make community safety a top priority.
As for the victim, she remains in stable condition and the investigation is ongoing. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
Now, business owners who were close to where the hostage situation took place couldn't believe what was unfolding before their eyes on Thursday afternoon. Staff from Modern Aesthetics and Bread, Milk and Honey recounted their tales during the harrowing time.
We actually didn't realize anything was going on, and we had 2 ladies come upstairs from the business below us, and they said, "There's police outside, do you know what's going on?" And we said, "No." We looked out the windows right away because we're kind of like removed from everything. We looked out the windows and there was cops surrounding everything, and actually in the alley right beside us, there were cops with guns out ablazing, and they had them pointed at the door at the law office next door.
Within about 20 minutes of me noticing the first vehicle pull up, we were asked to evacuate. So that's when things took a little bit of a turn, got pretty serious. In that same breath, everyone was really swift, and it was a really easy, safe evacuation. There wasn't too much of a kerfuffle, so to speak. Everybody was in good shape, and we got outside to the corner, and then from there it was a lot of just waiting and a lot of just curiosity for about an hour.
Employees say that despite the hostage situation, they do feel safe working downtown. Lethbridge police responded to a dog bite incident which occurred at a Westside schoolyard on Wednesday. 2 pit bulls were reported loose in the schoolyard of Dr. Gerald B. Proby Elementary School. An 8-year-old boy who was attending a summer camp at the school was attacked and bitten in the face. A 17-year-old female working at the camp was also bitten on the arm when she tried to intervene. The victims of the attacks were taken to hospital and treated for their injuries. Both dogs, which have the same owner, were seized or in the custody of the Community Animal Services, which is investigating the incident. In a statement, CAS says no charges have been filed with the courts, and it will take some time to determine the final outcome for the dogs. Nikiyuko Japanese Gardens celebrated the grand opening of the newly finished Bunka Center. The ceremony was celebrated on the 55th anniversary of the gardens Thursday, which drew out many from around the community to witness the ribbon cutting. Director of the Gardens, Michelle Miles, says the Japanese community has played a huge part in the project.
For them to see the actually here and the things on the wall and their story being shared, I think it's one of reflection and celebration. Working with the University of Lethbridge with the Memory Capture Project, working with the college and creating some digital archiving experiences with the garden and with some neat interactive engagement fun like our koi pond. The Japanese community have been part of this project since day one.
Government officials say that a lot of the funding for the centre came from both federal grants and donations. A commemorative tree has been planted at an old farmstead in the village of Stirling, Alberta. Now, the event paid respects to the Queen's Jubilee and her 70 years on the throne. The planting kicks off the start of settler days in Stirling as well. As BCN's Micah Quinn explains, local politicians and members of an Army Reserve unit from Lethbridge were there to take part in the festivities.
Stirling Mayor Trevor Lewington and members of the 20th Independent Field Battery were on hand on Thursday evening for the Green Canopy Initiative ceremonial tree planting. It was started by the Crown to mark Queen Elizabeth II's 70 years in power. Lewington says this is a global initiative.
But the fact that they're coming to smaller communities like Stirling, I think, is really important. It shows the connection that our country historically has to the Crown, but also to the military. You know, many people from this region fought in both Great World Wars. We've had a strong military component to our community in various campaigns ever since. So I think it's really important to maintain that connection.
The festivities took place at the Mickelson Farmstead, which is a provincial historic site and was built in 1902.
But it's a reminder of what life was like then and the struggles that the pioneers and the first settlers of this country had, and how you can literally build community from nothing. And we can all come to Canada if we're an immigrant. We can all come to a small town and we can find family, we can create that fabric, and we can build community literally from nothing.
The 20th Independent Field Battery is an Army Reserve unit consisting of around 100 members. The unit is based out of Lethbridge and has a strong relationship to the Queen. The honorary Lieutenant Colonel of the battery, Rick Casson, says the unit planted a tree in Lethbridge earlier this month and has plans to go to the Crow's Nest Pass to plant one there as well.
We're pretty happy that it's come together, and we look forward to this Manitoba maple being tall and red in the fall, years to come.
The commanding officer of the unit, Robert Mian, says the unit holds a special connection to Stirling and rural Alberta.
And so in southern Alberta, where you have pioneers, and especially the ranching community and the First Nations community, the horse was integral to the building of places like Stirling. And so it was places like Stirling that brought the cowboys and the pioneers in that manned the guns in World War I and then on to World War II when we were mechanized, when they were towed by trucks. Or self-propelled in some sort of tank chassis. It all started right here. It was in the rural areas of southern Alberta that the 20th Independent was formed. And so it's a great way to return and connect to the community that helped start us all those years ago.
The tree planting ceremony kicked off Settler Days in Stirling, and events will be taking place in the village until July 16th. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
A special powwow is returning for the first time in 2 years. The Kainai Powwow and celebration is coming to the Blood Tribe starting tonight with traditional Indigenous games and sports. Travis Plaited Hair with the Powwow Committee says he's excited to welcome back everyone to Red Crow Park in Standoff, Alberta, and you can expect to see lots of great activities.
Kainai is kicking off this evening, Friday, at 7 o'clock with our grand entry, along with our tour rodeo, Indian relay racing. We also have a golf tournament. We also have a ball tournament, and of course the powwow itself sort of being the main attraction. So we're anticipating a good crowd this weekend.
That looks like a lot of fun. The powwow runs all weekend with a 3 p.m. feast on Sunday to wrap up the festivities. The Calgary Stampede continues, and our own Jeanette Rocher was there chatting with a spokesperson with the North American Midway Entertainment Group about one of the biggest traveling Ferris wheels in North America. Scooter was pretty excited to bring the big wheel to the greatest outdoor show on earth. He explains just how big it really is.
We're not excited. We're thrilled to bring the Super Wheel to the Calgary Stampede. You know, we came out of Miami in the spring with it, and we came right straight to the Calgary Stampede, and we're setting up, and it's 150 feet tall. Okay. It takes 21 tractor trailers to move it on down the road. It's 36 climate-controlled cars, which give you sweeping views of the Calgary Stampede, the Rocky Mountains, the downtown Calgary, the fireworks at night. It's nothing less than spectacular.
Love those fireworks. Catch the full interview with BCN's Jeanette Rocher and Scooter talking about that big wheel coming up on BCN Weekend tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Well, Jeanette came down from that big wheel and is here now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, the heat warning for much of southern Alberta is still in effect from Environment Canada. How long will the scorcher last for us, not only here in Lethbridge, but for those who are taking in the Calgary Stampede?
Well, if you're taking in the Stampede on Saturday, a high of 29 degrees in that city, but also looking at a 60% chance of showers in Calgary with the risk of a thunderstorm in the afternoon. So that could change your plans a little bit, especially if you're planning to ride that super wheel like I was. As for the rest of us here in Lethbridge, yes, that heat warning still in effect. We're looking at temperatures well into the 30s, high 33 on Saturday with lots of sunshine. As for the rest of the weekend, I will get into all those details coming up later on in the show.
Thanks so much, Jeanette. The Trudeau government is bringing back mandatory random COVID-19 testing at 4 major airports. Officials say the 4 are Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. The testing will resume as of July 19th and will be for travelers who are fully vaccinated, partially, or unvaccinated. The swab tests will take place outside of airports either by an in-person appointment or virtually. All travelers must also continue to use the ArriveCan app to provide mandatory travel information within 72 hours before arriving in Canada or before boarding a cruise ship destined for Canada. Health officials say if you test positive following the random test, you must isolate for 10 days from the date of the test result. Canada's federal sports minister says Hockey Canada's apology and pledge to make changes to the culture within the game is a good step in the right direction. Hockey Canada published an open letter that includes an apology for not doing enough to address the actions of some members of the 2018 national junior team following an alleged sexual assault. A number of sponsors paused their funding after Hockey Canada quietly settled a lawsuit back in May with a woman who claimed she was assaulted by 8 players at an event in London, Ontario. Soaring inflation is not only affecting many Canadians, but also millions of Americans. Long lineups are forming once again outside of food banks across the United States. Skyrocketing food and gas prices are making it much more difficult for so many families.
Today we're distributing the food and we try to assist the families as much as we can. It's a mess. Before we used to see probably only seniors, now it's families, now it's seniors, people with disabilities. So yes, it's been an increase.
What brings us out here today is through MAOF delivering food to the families to make us happy and supply us with food because of our high inflation. The prices of food are so high and they're going up higher every day, and we're senior citizens and I'm so glad that they're able to help us.
A wildfire burning east of Yosemite National Park, California, was 23% contained on Thursday. The fire is threatening a grove of giant sequoia trees, most of which are more than 2,000 years old. The Washburn fire has ballooned to over 4,200 acres since it was reported last week. More than 1,000 fire crew personnel are fighting the blaze. Temperatures were expected to remain warm and dry with light to moderate winds this weekend, creating conditions that could fuel the flames even more. Meanwhile, a separate wildfire broke out in Northern California late Thursday and was reported to have destroyed 12 structures and forced more evacuations. The governor of West Virginia, Jim Justice, declared a state of emergency for McDowell County, which is the southern part of the state. In a statement, he said flooding on Tuesday damaged more than 75 homes, 12 bridges, and multiple roads in the region. Fortunately, all 40 people who were reported missing have now been found. According to search and rescue officials, the monumental search effort for the missing people covered around 50 kilometers and 400 structures. The state used 6 teams to assist, leaving no man, woman, or child behind. Russian missiles struck a city in central Ukraine late Thursday, killing at least 23 people. The attack also wounded more than 100 others. According to Ukrainian authorities, the missile strike was far from the front lines.
Сьогодні я адресую це звернення не українцям і українкам, як зазвичай, а нашим партнерам, демократичному світу. Цей день вкотре довів, що Росія має бути офіційно визнана державою-терористом. Жодна інша держава світу не являє собою такої терористичної загрози, як Росія. Жодна інша держава світу не дозволяє собі щоденно знищувати крилатими ракетами і реактивною артилерією мирні міста і звичайне людське життя.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian servicemen used American M777 howitzers on the battlefield in the northeast part of the war-torn country. This howitzer can reach targets up to 25 kilometers away and can shoot up to 5 rounds a minute. The U.S. government last week pledged another $400 million worth of military equipment to Ukraine. American officials say these weapons will help the Ukrainian military to strike deeper behind Russian positions in the eastern Donbas region. The persecution of Christians continues unabated in many regions around the world, including in Africa. Greg Musselman is with the Voice of the Martyrs Canada, and he says the attacks are rising, particularly in Nigeria.
The targeted attacks against Christians definitely is rising. I've been there a number of times, many times actually over the years, and it's always been a bad situation. In the top 5, usually on the Open Doors World Watch list of the most dangerous countries and places to be in following Jesus. But now things are accelerating, and I expect, unless there's some kind of intervention here, we are going to see a continual rise of Christians being persecuted. Some of these Islamic groups like the Boko Haram, the Fulani herdsmen, and Islamic State West Africa are increasing their attacks to become more emboldened, and the government's not doing a lot.
Greg Musselman from Voice of the Martyrs Canada will have more on how Christians are being persecuted in Nigeria coming up later in our program. In partnership with African healthcare systems and leaders, Mercy Ships was able to train and mentor local medical professionals, improving surgical care in the long term. As we hear in this next report, the surgeries performed on board Mercy Ships floating hospitals are life-changing for both patients and their communities.
During a first visit to Africa last month, the Global Mercy, run by Christian charity Mercy Ships, hosted 302 Senegalese medical professionals on board for a series of 8 courses in the port city of Dakar in Senegal. The charity's medical capacity buildings director is Erin Mears.
The goal of medical capacity building is to support making surgery affordable, timely, safe, now and in the future.
Students learn how to practice safe pediatric anesthesia in a very safe environment where they have faculty from Senegal and also from around the world teaching them new techniques.
Ces formations sont très importantes parce que déjà on apprend beaucoup d'autres choses, ça nous permet de revoir certaines choses qu'on n'avait pas encore vues, ça nous permet de revoir.
Ce sont les compétences chirurgicales de base dont on a besoin pour pouvoir pratiquer une chirurgie. Comment se mettre stérile avant d'opérer, comment se déplacer, manipuler les instruments.
Les simulations étaient très intéressantes. Ça nous a vraiment permis de pratiquer et d'acquérir en même temps certains gestes.
Sterile processing department has always been underrated. And it's so sad because we play a significant role in infection prevention. I think this course is important because they see the significance of the work that they do.
J'ai trouvé la formation très enrichissante, vu que la formation elle doit être continue. Donc ça nous permet de nous améliorer. Ce qui m'a le plus marqué, c'est la prise en charge des patients qui devient beaucoup plus simple. Il y a l'accent sur la prévention.
And the Global Mercy will begin providing the first surgeries on board in 2023. Peter Wooding for the Global News Alliance.
Environment Canada's heat warning continued for much of southwestern Alberta today, and a sizzling hot weekend is shaping up. Full weather details are on deck. Well, the heat warning continued for our region today. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, sunglasses and sunscreen will be in big demand this weekend.
Yeah, you bet that they will definitely be in a hot commodity this weekend, not to mention water. Lots of water. Make sure you stay hydrated because it is going to be absolutely blistering. We're looking at a high of 33 on a Saturday, so still under that heat warning. Overnight low, only 13 degrees. Lots of sunshine on Sunday, up to 28 degrees the high. We could get a bit of a reprieve from that on Monday with showers, high of only 17 degrees. Back up to 30 though on Tuesday under sunny skies, and then a high of 28 Wednesday, 29 on Thursday with clear skies. So we're definitely higher than average for this time of year. Average is 26, average low 11 degrees. 35 was our high temperature on this day back in 1996. And in 1999, we had the chilliest, which was only 2. 5:40 is when the sun rose this morning. Sunset this evening, 9:34 p.m., giving us 15 hours and 56 or 54 minutes of daylight, about 2 minutes shorter than we were yesterday. 21 the high in Victoria tomorrow, looking at a 30% chance of showers, windy in the Juan de Fuca Strait. 23 the high in Vancouver, 40% chance of showers in the morning. 27 in Edmonton looking at hot, humid, fog dissipating in the morning. 29 in Calgary, and as I mentioned before, looking at 60% chance of showers in the afternoon there with the risk of a thunderstorm. Heat warning in effect for Saskatchewan, particularly Saskatoon and the Regina region. 34 the high in Saskatoon, 35 in Regina. With the humidex, we're looking at like 36, 38 for those cities. Winnipeg also high humidity and looking at the possibility of some showers there as well. 29 the high in both Ottawa and Toronto tomorrow with high UV indexes, lots of sunshine. 29 also the high in Montreal tomorrow. Montreal could see a bit of partly cloudy skies though. Now in Fredericton tomorrow, 28 the high with partly cloudy skies. 28 also in Halifax with lots of sunshine. Sunshine also in Charlottetown tomorrow, high of 25 and a high of 23 degrees tomorrow in St. John's, Newfoundland. Could see some showers there though. So there you have it. That is your Saturday forecast.
The House of Commons is set to discuss launching an investigation into the Rogers outage. Last Friday's debacle lasted more than 15 hours. It affected mobile and internet users, knocked out ATMs, shut down the Interact payment system, and prevented 911 services in some Canadian cities. Calgary Tory MP Michelle Rempel-Garner wrote the committee last week requesting it hold an emergency meeting on the issue. The NDP also called for bringing Rogers in, along with Interact and Canada's Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne to the committee. There's more evidence that the housing market is cooling off. The Canadian Real Estate Association says home sales fell 24% in June on a year-over-year basis. That's not as big as the declines it saw in April and May. The national average home price fell 2% from a year ago to $665,849. Wholesale sales in Canada rose 1.6% in May to $81.1 billion. Now, according to Stats Canada, sales rose in 5 of the 7 sectors. The agency reports that food, beverage, and machinery helped lead the way higher. May's increase was the 8th in the past 10 months. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 65 points on the day to finish at 18,394. The Dow was up 658 points to 31,288. The S&P 500 was up 72 points to 3863, and the Nasdaq was also up on the day 201 points to 11,452. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.81 to $97.59 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 42 cents to $7.02 US. Gold was down $1.77 to $17.0817 US an ounce, and silver was up 29 cents to $18.71 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $12.30 per bushel, barley's at $8.75, canola's at $18.55, and corn is at $11.05 per bushel. Live cattle August contract was down 48 cents to $134.93. Feeder cattle August contract was down $2.55 to $176.35, and lean hogs July contract was down 3 cents to $114.90. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 76.78 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Lethbridge police have charged 40-year-old Lethbridge resident Courtney Louise Shaw with attempted murder. It's in connection with yesterday's incident in which a 54-year-old woman was stabbed in the neck several times after being taken hostage at a downtown law office. Police recovered a knife and a black airsoft handgun at the scene. Shaw was remanded in custody and will appear in court on July the 22nd. Christians are being persecuted and killed in many regions of Nigeria. Things are pretty bad there right now, according to Greg Musselman with Voice of the Martyrs Canada. Greg will have details for us momentarily. But first, here's a look at some of the special events taking place right here in southwestern Alberta.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. The City of Lethbridge welcomes all residents to participate in Goldfish Derby Days. On Saturday, July 16th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., Firelight Pond will host the Derby Days and provide education on the issue of releasing unwanted goldfish and koi into local storm ponds. Residents and visitors with fishing licenses are welcome to come and fish out the goldfish and koi. Plus, there will also be family-friendly activities and food trucks will be on site. To find out more, call 311. Discover how Lethbridge has played an important military role in the preservation of world peace and security by visiting the Lethbridge Military Museum at the Vimy Ridge Armory at the Lethbridge Airport. The museum is open to the public each Wednesday from noon to 4 p.m. Special arrangements for other days and times can be made by calling 403-892-6531. Admission is free, but donations are gratefully accepted. For more information, visit lethbridgemilitarymuseum.org. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
It appears as though violence against Christians is on the rise across the globe. Now, according to recent reports, one of the most dangerous countries is Nigeria. Joining us now from St. Albert, Alberta, just outside of Edmonton, to talk about this is Greg Musselman, the Minister at Large for Voice of the Martyrs Canada, who just returned from Nigeria. Greg, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Oh, good to be back with you, Hal.
So how bad is it really in Nigeria? How many attacks are we talking about here?
Well, we're talking about, more than 20 already this year, and there were more than 30 last year. And so we're only about halfway through the year. So, the targeted attacks against Christians definitely is rising. I've been there a number of times, many times actually over the years, and it's always been a bad situation. In the top 5, usually on the Open Doors World Watch list of the most dangerous countries and places to be in following Jesus. But now things are accelerating, and I expect, unless there's some kind of intervention here, we are going to see a continual rise of Christians being persecuted. Some of these Islamic groups like the Boko Haram, the Fulani herdsmen, and Islamic State West Africa are increasing their attacks. They become more emboldened, and the government's not doing a lot.
I understand there were 2 attacks on churches on Pentecost Sunday earlier this month. Describe what happened.
Yeah, and I mean, usually, you hear about Easter and Christmas. That's always where we're really intensifying prayer and protection for Christians in Nigeria. But Pentecost Sunday, of course, also important on the Christian calendar. So one actually took place in the southwestern part of the country, which is unusual. And we'll talk about northern Nigeria because that's where most of the persecution is happening. But hundreds of Christians have been gathered at the St. Francis Catholic Church in the southwestern state of Ondo. Now, that, again, is a part of Nigeria which has been relatively calm and free of violence against, attacks against Christians. But the service was disrupted by gunshots and explosions, and worshipers, as you can imagine, Hal, trying to flee the building. Gunmen shot them as they're leaving the building, shot them outside. We've heard reports the youngest victim was a boy around 11. The oldest victim was in his 80s, shot outside the church. And when the bloodshed was complete, dozens lay dead. It is heartbreaking. I see them often, and it reminds me of just how evil these things that are perpetrated against the followers of Jesus. And then the surviving victims, they were rushed to hospital with injuries. And I actually did an interview yesterday with Emmanuel Ogebi. He is with a ministry called Justice for Joss. He's in Washington, D.C. He is from Nigeria, and he was recently there. In fact, we were there at the same time, but we didn't get together at that point. But he told me reports are that there have been at least 40 killed, and the number could be much higher than that. And as I mentioned, and if you put yourself into the situation, these believers trying to escape the shooting, and I was in a service on Pentecost Sunday in Winnipeg, and we were celebrating, the coming of the Holy Spirit, how the church began, and just think a few hours before our brothers and sisters were being killed. So this went on for about 20 minutes at this church in southwestern Nigeria. The perpetrators left. Last we heard, there have been no reports, and the Fulani herdsmen are believed to be to blame for this. And witnesses, again, outside the church building, they saw 4 people leaving at the time of that attack. So that's just one attack. And again, I think the scary part about this is that this is happening in the southern part of the country. Now, it's bad what's going on in the north, but now we're hearing that these Islamic groups are actually hiding in the forest. They've set up camps, and they are preparing to wage even more attacks on the believers in the south as well as in the north.
Are some of these extremist groups also attacking some of the Christians in the south for their livestock?
Well, that's what the Fulani herdsmen are about. And when you look at sort of the history of these folks, they're nomadic and, they graze their cattle. And I've seen them actually when I've been in Nigeria. And again, let's just please, understand that most Fulani people are peaceful. And they're mostly Muslim, but there's the extremists within that group, and they are absolutely brutal. They're unlike the Boko Haram, and many have heard of them. They've been around for a number of years. They kidnapped these young girls from Chibok and other places. So they kidnap and they force these young girls into Islam, and they are using them for ransom, kidnapping pastors and other Christians. But the Fulani go in and they just kill. And they're brutal in the way they do it, and in just such horrible, horrible ways. But yes, they're nomadic. They are, they graze their cattle on the land. And then if it's on Christian property, let's say, on the farm, and the Christians, say, hey, you can't do that. They put up a fuss. And then what happens is then the Fulanis will attack them. So that's a part of the building of the Fulanis as they become more and more militant.
So why isn't the Nigerian government doing more to stop these vicious attacks?
That is the question that every time I do my podcast Closer to the Fire, I ask those questions. As I mentioned, I was talking to Emmanuel Ogebi with Justice for Jos and saying, why is the government not doing more? And there's a number of reasons for that. I believe that they may not have the ability to do it. And I don't think there is really that. They're not that motivated. In fact, one of the things that is really disturbing, there was another attack that took place in Kaduna State, and that's in the north, and that's where there's been more attacks. And so this is, again, on Pentecost Sunday. So this will just give you kind of an example, Hal, of the government not only not being able to protect the Christians, but they may even be involved in some of these attacks. So again, Pentecost Sunday, June 5th, the same church, or that day that we just talked about, Catholic church there, and dozens were killed, and 32 people in 4 villages in that area in Kaduna were killed. And the report that Emmanuel was telling me about is they heard from, the victims and, their families as they were, looking over what had happened, is that when the word had got that these militants were coming on their motorcycles, the government was called. And a military helicopter was actually flying in the area. And instead of shooting at those that were perpetrating this, they were shooting at the Christians who were in the forest, and 32, believers were killed. And so now we got a situation where it's not only the government not doing enough to protect the Christians, in some cases they actually may be involved. And we've heard other situations as well where the Christians have, called on the military because they, get word that these militants are coming, and the government doesn't do anything. And the soldiers are in the area and they say, well, we didn't get the orders to stop this attack. And by the time it's over, dozens of Christians are killed.
Now, a lot of this information, obviously, you're getting secondhand from some of your sources down in Nigeria. But when you were in Nigeria, Greg, did you see some of the devastation and maybe the remnants of what was left behind from some of these vicious attacks?
Definitely. I mean, where we work, just outside of Jos, it's called Christian Faith Ministries, run by a couple from Australia, Kent and Ruth Hodge. And they set up a compound 15 years ago in that area. This is the central part of Nigeria, a Bible school. And out of the Bible school during that time, they just saw the needs. There were victims of violence and the trauma. The kids now, they lost mom and dad. They don't have any way to support themselves, have no education. So they've come there. And so when I was there 4 years ago, this is all before COVID hit, there were probably 300-400 kids in the school. Now there are more than 1,200. And I mean, these are kids, and all of them have been traumatized because they've lost their parents. So, we're hearing those stories. Now, one of the main reasons I went down to Nigeria on this recent trip is the Voice of the Martyrs and Crossroads Christian Communication, 100 Huntley Street, of which I'm one of the hosts, to go down, and we are raising funds to finish a trauma center. It's called Mara's House. And so the idea then is to help these girls who have been traumatized. So, you have your, the physical needs. They need food, they need a place to stay. That's being provided. They need education. But all the damage that's been done to them, the things that they've heard, and not only the girls, but also the women as well. And I did a number of interviews, where young women have been raped. They've been forced to marry these Boko Haram commanders and soldiers. Their husbands that they were forced this marriage, they were killed. They maybe lost their children. So they're just dealing with so many things. In the midst of it, though, and I just want to give some hope here, because this just sounds pretty terrible, and it is. It's evil what's going on there, perpetrated against the followers of Jesus. But in the middle of all that, we're hearing these amazing faith stories. So many folks from a Muslim background have come to know Jesus. And that's, in many cases, the reasons that they're attacked, trying to force them back into Islam, and then they suffer brutally. But, so God is working in amazing ways. He's doing miracles. We just heard, actually, the Chibok girls going back 8 years, Borno State, when they were captured by the Boko Haram, 276 girls, and there's still over 100 that are still in captivity. But after 8 years, 2 of the girls have now been able to be free and are being reunited with their families. If you can imagine, again, those lost years and all the trauma. But so there's some really good stories in the midst of all the pain and the struggle. But there's also a lot of fear, because things are ramping up in the north. There's more attacks. And as we've just been talking about, things are starting to also become more tense in the south as well. But, having been there, hearing the stories, the sadness and the pain that so many of our brothers and sisters in Christ are going through, it's very difficult to hear the stories. And yet, how we need to be praying, we need to support them, and we need to be concerned, because they are part of the family of God.
Yeah, we'll talk about more of that support in just a moment here, Greg. But let's circle back to a comment you made earlier, that the Nigerian government appears to not be doing very much in regards to these vicious attacks. What about the public? Is there much public outcry right now?
Well, one of the problems is Nigeria has had, years and years and years of violence. In the last 20 years, especially since the Boko Haram, and, there was a great outcry. We talked about the Chibok girls. Well, there's 276 girls when they were kidnapped. President Obama's wife, Michelle, they were, a lot of people, celebrities were speaking out against this, and which was appreciated. But when it's ongoing, people get kind of numb to it, and that is the challenge. And then you have a war in Ukraine that is, taking a lot of the international attention. You've got climate issues, you've got all the things that are going on in our world, that what's happening in Nigeria kind of gets buried a little bit. And that's why I appreciate having an opportunity to be on your program, is to remind people that this is still ongoing, and these are real people that are suffering. So, but we can continue to pressure our members of parliament and say, we're concerned about what is going on in Nigeria. Will you just lend the Canadian voice to this, and saying that, this is unacceptable. But then you've got the United States that, saying that Nigeria no longer really is a country of concern when it comes to religious persecution, which is absolutely terrible. And I know there's political and economic reasons for it, but really that should never, ever trump, the human rights violations that are happening in Africa's largest nation.
So, Greg, outside of prayer and reaching out to our MPs, what else can Canadians do to really help our brothers and sisters in Nigeria?
Well, you can get a hold of Voice of the Martyrs, vomcanada.com. We're working in Nigeria, as is Crossroads, as I mentioned, 100 Huntley Street, in practical ways. One of the things I always tell people too, and I've been doing this for more than 20 years and speaking in churches in Canada and around the world, is saying, we can get overwhelmed when we hear about countries like Nigeria and just go, well, there's nothing really I can do about it. But we can, and we can help them one at a time. When I was there, we met a lady named Amina. Her husband had been murdered. He was a Christian, murdered right in front of her. Her children, they tried to force them to renounce Christianity. Christianity and become Muslim. They refused. They survived. Then 5 years later, she was captured by Boko Haram and taken into the forest with 8 other ladies, and was actually on YouTube pleading for her life. And so I had an opportunity to talk to her, and we're Voice of the Martyrs, through our partners in Nigeria, are building our house. So we do it one at a time. And that's so important. So get a hold of the Voice of the Martyrs and other organizations that work with a persecuted church. But here's something that I found really troubling, is talking to our partners in Nigeria, is the church in the southern part of the country is not really helping out very much with their brothers and sisters in the north, which is sad, because they're just down the road kind of thing, and they're not concerned. And the 1,000 or so, Nigerian churches in the US and the dozens of Nigerian churches in Canada. And my encouragement, especially within those communities and all communities, because we're all related because of Jesus, is to get behind it. Don't ignore what's going on in your former homeland. And so we need to be proactive. We need to be helping. We need to be praying, and we can support as well. And my heart was very warmed when I saw what was going on with Christian Faith Ministries. And, they have a hospital. They train in vocations. They have the Bible school. They're reaching their Muslim neighbors. They're helping to train them in vocation and bringing reconciliation. So God is at work in the midst of this horrible war zone. You see the light of Jesus shining.
Greg Musselman is the Minister at Large for Voice of the Martyrs Canada. Greg, thanks so much for joining us today from St. Albert, Alberta.
Well, thank you again, Helen. Appreciate the opportunity. And again, let's keep praying for our brothers and sisters that are paying a huge price to follow Jesus.
We are at the Lethbridge Fish and Game Shooting Sports Facility. I am joined by Alan Friesen, who is the past president of Lethbridge Fish and Game and a firearms instructor. Right, Alan?
Correct.
Thanks so much for joining us here on Bridge City News. Actually, you're hosting us, so
thank
you for having us here. Let's talk about what Bill C-21 actually is.
So I guess the components that I understand it to be of what I know, because it kind of reveals as we go with the changes. As an example, there's not supposed to be a registry, but there is a registry now, right? So there was a registry was put in place, then discontinued a number of years ago. Now on an unofficial basis, they've introduced a registry. So people like Marksman Guns and Sports, where they have a store, now they have to record every transaction, the owner, and they have to maintain these records for 20 years. That's a registry. So that's one thing that's been slid in that, we're getting this back. Two is that these firearms that now have been said, these are too scary, Canadians can't own them, those ones that are going to be prohibited, well, that equipment then will be apparently bought back, which is different than what they've done in the past. In the past, they kind of have a grandfathered kind of a status, and then the person who's grandfathered keeps the equipment until they die, and then they destroy it, is basically the idea. Okay. So with this one here, it's different. They're going to come back and say, you can't use this until we come back and buy it from you. And when they buy it, it's going to be, it doesn't matter. As a property owner who legally bought a piece of property in Canada, they're going to tell me what they're going to accept, what I'm going to accept for it, and that's going to be the way it is, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the big chunks to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So do you think that Bill C-21 will actually stop current handgun owners from owning handguns in the future?
Well, for currents, no. My understanding is they will be able to retain those guns until they die, but everybody else go forward would not. Which then we have an amazing youth shooting program here, safe shooting department, and we have youth that are part of that, and we got 30 kids that are starting tonight in that program, right? And it is a really amazing opportunity to teach responsibility to children, to show them that their action they take has a consequence. With handguns, it happens right away, and so we want to make that real clear that what they're using, that they have to respect it, use it safely, or they cannot participate. Yeah. So we have kids that are amazingly responsible, amazingly good citizens that have come out of that program. They're great.
So, Alan, do you think that we're now going to be seeing a rush across Canada of people buying handguns before this bill passes?
Yes. Every time the federal government announces firearm safety laws, my student list goes up, swells up, and every time people are in a flurry to buy equipment that might go away in the future, right, or might be restricted or controlled. Some of that is bizarre. When we're talking about the restricted firearms, the ones that are going to be restricted now, or prohibited, I should say. One, in my case, I have one that I bought 25 years ago, a non-restricted firearm, can use it shoot a gopher or go
shoot a gopher.
Well, you know, there are problems at the farm. So, or shoot a coyote if that's killing our cats or whatever, and then you clean it, put it back in the safe, and it's good. You know, use it for another year, right? So now I am a criminal now if I take that out of the safe. Well, that's craziness.
This, of course, is a really emotional time with all recent mass shootings in the U.S.
Yes.
So a lot of people do want to see governments do something to stop that gun violence. So do you think that banning guns will have a tangible effect on this?
No, unfortunately it will not. It's and the terrible tragedy, I cannot imagine the pain those parents in Texas are going through to have their little ones killed and it's heartbreaking. Some of them people will never recover from that kind of trauma, right? So it's horrible. But firearms, violence, like all violence, is just a symptom, right? We got to get at the cause. What is the cause? How does an 18-year-old kid get to the point where he is so disconnected and so full of hate that he's going to kill all these little innocent children, right? How does that happen? So what supports were missing to get that kid to a point where he could be helped and he would never got to that stage, right? So, and I'm not blaming him. And grandma seems like she was did her best to be a loving parent, but you know what? The kid was apparently, you know, really abused and teased and that kind of thing. And not unlike, remember the tragedy in Tabor, what is that, 15 years ago? Same thing, a little kid that was, you know, picked on and abused and told he's a worthless piece of shit every day. And then all of a sudden what happens, right? Violence is the problem. How do we address the violence? Because that's the issue, right? And I think we have to draw a distinction between self-violence and violence against others. Do you think that makes sense, that distinction?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because violence against self, our laws don't seem to want to be involved with that. That if a Canadian, no longer wants to be here, that they have the right to no longer be here. And then they can even get at the medically assisted dying if they want. So self against harm is entirely different. So the whole thing that we're addressing is self against others. So the whole
harm against self, harm against self. Yeah.
Harm against others. Thank you. Harm against others. So that's the issue we're addressing. As it relates to firearms, that's a very, very small part of the problem. 80% of the firearm deaths in Canada are suicide. And then of the 5% that are accidents, I'm sure many of those are actually suicides as well. So we're talking a very small chunk of 1,200 Canadians, according to the Firearm Safety Course, 1,200 Canadians who die every year, at least 80% are self-harm. So
it's so sad.
It is.
Do you think it's fair to say that a bill like this, new gun laws won't necessarily change the minds of hardened criminals or gang members to somehow give up gun violence?
The laws that come into place, if we're following, if the responsible firearm owners are already following all the laws, right, and all the laws already will not allow, are so stringent already. Just as a good example, we keep hearing this as assault-style rifles, right? That's what you keep hearing. Okay, so what is an assault-style rifle? According to Google, if you look it up, it's a fully automatic firearm that is used in military pursuits, where you're going to use it to kill people. That's what an assault rifle is. We don't have assault rifles in Canada. They've been banned in Canada since 1978. So we don't have them. They're banned. There is no fully automatic firearms. Well, pardon me, there's a couple old guys that probably have them, and they got them in their safe because they're never going to leave, and when they die, they're going to be chopped up and destroyed. So we don't have assault rifles in Canada, period.
Okay. Any thoughts on where the government could better spend our money to reduce gun violence?
I love that you asked that question. That is a beautiful question. But I'm going to change it up a little bit, okay? I think that reducing violence is important, but I don't think it's just gun violence, because that's a really, really small part of the puzzle. Here's what I think is something we could make huge gains for people. Every day, every night in Canada, there's 3,500 women who are escaping domestic violence in their home, kiddies on their shoulders or on their hips, trying to get out of harm's way every night. And about 300 more women and their kiddos don't find shelter because there's not enough room. Okay, that is where we could make a huge, huge difference in people's lives. Instead of looking at a problem where it's mostly to do with self-harm, let's look at harm to others, very vulnerable people, and give them supports and protection.
Wow, okay. Do you think that it's too easy for someone to get a gun license in Canada? Do you think that our gun laws are too lax?
No, they are. I know we look at the South and we say, oh, we got this big problem because the South has a big problem. Our numbers are entirely different. We have 1,200 deaths in Canada from firearms in a year, right? 80% of those are suicide. In the United States, it's 35,000, something like that. Instead of 1,200, it's 35,000. It's a whole different context, right? And then also there's the firearm controls there. You could buy a gun anywhere, any weekend, you can go to a swap meet and buy a gun in the United States, right? They don't even ask for your piece of ID, right? Here, you have to take a course. You have to take 2 courses, Canadian Firearm Safety Course or Canadian Firearm Restricted Safety Course, in order that you can apply for a license. When you apply for a license, you're going to answer questions about your mental health, your financial health, your marital health, or your relationship health, those kind of things. You're going to provide references that are going to check you over. They're going to, of course, going to do a police check. And firearm owners in Canada are the most vetted people in our whole country, because every day, if I'm a firearm owner, which I am, they'd run a police check on me every day on every Canadian who has a firearm license. So we are kept to a higher standard. They don't check you, they check me every day. And if there's something there's an issue that maybe I've gone to violence or then I get approached and gee, we're gonna take them firearms, right? And I don't have any problem with that. That's being prudent, but it's rarely. I've been teaching this course for 35 years. I can't think of one time where I had a student say, ooh, that guy shouldn't have a gun. I mean, the people who come here are just people who want to engage in a very safe, exciting, dynamic sport that can be a lifetime sport and is the safest sport in the world. Like, you do the stats on the Olympics, like of shooting sports worldwide. Shooting is the safest sport.
So how do we keep guns from getting into the hands of the wrong people?
Well, one, be very, very harsh on the criminals, right? Like, that's not happening right now. It's kind of, you catch them and they get a slap in the hand and they go out. No. Firearm laws, firearm infractions, violence of any sort should be extremely harshly dealt with. We got to stop it. Like, that's the problem. Violence leads to trauma for people, right? And then that trauma leads to lives that are really hard for their whole life unless they deal with the trauma they've experienced, and often they experience as a child.
You had kind of alluded to the youth shooting program that you have here. So let's talk about the many individuals and families with kids who come out to the shooting gallery here. Is it a safe sport, in your opinion?
Let me tell you about a time when I was wrong. I've been wrong a few times. Rick Blakely was saying range 3 over here, we're going to make it into a 22 range only. They're quiet, very, very little recoil, right? And I thought, that's crazy. What is he doing? But then every night, every weekend, I see grandma there with his grandchild, and I see grandma and the aunties shooting, and it's just a beautiful family place. You come out, you buy a box of ammo for, whatever this is, $3, and you got an afternoon of fun, right, with your grandkids. It's a beautiful place. So yeah, very, very family-oriented activity that way. And with the youth program, oh man, we got some kids that are, there's one kid. He was so small, he was 12. I was really worried about him, but he was really, really dedicated to muzzle control and trigger control. He was very, very focused on it. But he had to put 2 fingers on the trigger to press it when he was so small.
Sure,
initially.
Of course.
But now he's like this tall and, like just an amazing gun handler. If anything happened, I would not be at all worried that he would be safe, whatever happened. So.
Okay, so Ellen, what are the benefits of kids learning to shoot?
Well, the best thing I can share for you is that there's in all of our life, we make decisions, and those decisions result in consequences, and that, here's what happens because of it, right? With shooting, that is like down to a millisecond, right? I take this action, I press this trigger, this bullet leaves this muzzle, it hits there. So it happens right now. So in a similar way to my life, I have control. If I have control what happens here, I'm going to control what happens down there. In my life, I can make adjustments. With a firearm, I can't. Once the trigger is pressed, the bullet's going where it's going to go. But that tie to this action results in this consequence, and then relate that to this applies to your life as well, right? If you do these things, here's what's going to happen.
So life lessons then.
I think so.
Okay, so what would you say to a parent who says, hey, is this potentially going to make my child like violence or become more violent?
It will 100% help your child to become a more responsible human being, period, full stop. There's nobody that we get out here and they say, ooh, that kid came from our program and now, we got to go get him arrested because he's lost it, right? That doesn't happen, right? So
Alan, I know that we would love to hear about the facility here. It's large. It's way bigger than I expected. This is my first time here. So tell me about it.
This is an amazing facility, and we're very, very thankful for our relationship with the City of Lethbridge, Mayor, Council, and the administration. They've been very supportive. We recently had a huge enhancement to this facility. It's $1.7 million with city funds, with fish and game funds, and with a commitment to support our youth program going on. Every year we spend about $30,000 supporting youth programs. So that's free ammunition, free instruction, free range time, free targets. So, and all of the people who do that are all volunteers. So we have people who volunteer to make that happen. So an amazing world-class facility right here, the City of Lethbridge right there. How can we operate a range when the City of Lethbridge is right there? Because this is a total containment facility. With these last enhancements, this is like the world-class, the best standard you can get in terms of a projectile management. That's really what a range is, a projectile management system. And we have the best system that exists right here.
Okay, and you were saying that even the Lethbridge Police Service comes here to do their practicing.
They do. Lethbridge Police, RCMP, CBSA, we have them and support them. We're very, very big fans of law enforcement and working with law enforcement. We've had situations where law enforcement have came to us and asked us about an individual. Is this, should we be worried? That kind of a thing. And what we will often do is just say, here's our cameras, here's our feed. You give it a look, right? We want to be everybody's safe. We're on the same side with anti-gun Sally that doesn't want anybody to own a gun. She don't want anybody to gun because she wants to be safe. We want you to be safe. We want everybody to be safe. Firearms by themselves are not dangerous. It's a piece of equipment. We can all use them safely if we choose to.
Well, Alan, thanks so much for having us out today. I know I learned a lot for sure.
Hey, I appreciate you coming. Thanks for coming to our amazing facility and your interest in firearm safety. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. That is Alan Friesen, the past president of the Lethbridge Fish and Game and the firearms instructor here at Lethbridge Fish and Game Shooting and Sports Facility. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.